And Grand Rising. Welcome to Wake Up with Sonia Poulton and guests. Thank you for being here. It is Monday, the 18th of August, 2025. It is exactly 9 a.m. British summertime. And thank you so much for arriving. Whether you are arriving on the live or you are arriving later, thank you for arriving. Welcome to the... Oops, hold on. I'm just back at myself briefly. How are you all? Welcome to the show that knows no matter what you think about yourself, you are not a mistake. You are a message. Oh, yes, indeed. Thank you for my birthday messages, people. I really appreciated it. The lovely gifts on Friday. You people are amazing. I truly, truly appreciate it. So many lovely messages. Wonderful, wonderful messages. I didn't feel the need to go on social media and announce it to the world because, as you will hear at the end of the show, that's part of the old me. And today you have the new me, and I'm feeling extremely blessed. This is probably one of my favorite birthday cards, I have to say. 8 billion people on the planet. I know we can argue that. And you're my favorite. From my daughter, I think that if there's anything at all that I've succeeded at in life, it's being a mother, and that makes me proud. How are you all? I hope you are well. Thank you for my belated birthday wishes. You are wonderful. You are a message. Yes, indeed, you are, Shin. And how are you all? Well, first of all, let me just say thank you all for being here in the live chat. Wonderful to see you. What is on today's Wake Up? We will be joined by journalist Warren Thornton, who will be talking Putin, Trump, Zelensky, coalition of willing, Israel's cyber security predator, and Marjorie Taylor Greene's quite brilliant howler. Plus, we'll be joined by former police superintendent Tony Thompson. He'll be here with some great news to do with Clive Freeman, who we have rallied behind for the last 5 years. Whichever show I've been on, I've been rallying behind Clive Freeman, and he's been granted an appeal. Great, phenomenal stuff. Plus, climate realist Paul Burgess will be joining us for the Chemtrail Q&A. Put your questions live to Paul. And let's just do this. We'll also be looking at the inevitable division of Lucy Connolly versus Ricky Jones. And if you don't know what I mean, you will shortly. Plus, movement at the WEF. Schwab has been cleared. Shocker. And new interim chairs installed. Oh, yes, indeed. Plus, very mixed messages to do with former neonatal nurse Lucy Letby. More about that shortly. And Ofcom, up yours. Platforms are starting to fight back against this draconian totalitarian censorship. Absolutely. Plus, we'll have your shout with some viewer emails. And I want to implore you at the end of the show about the importance of protecting your energy. And I have learned, albeit belatedly, how to do that. And the starting point is limit social media, but not this show. Absolutely not. Tweety Pie, thank you for that super sticker. You are a star. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Feeling nice and vibrant. I actually wasn't that well, in all honesty, over my birthday period. I had a foot issue. And at one stage I was laid up, which was absolutely amazing because I have really wonderful, good people around me who take care of me. I'm very, very blessed. Right. What is coming up this week? Well, as anti-migrant protests continue around the UK, there's a court hearing today for men charged with violent disorder at the Epping protest, which kicked off this new round of protests this year. On Wednesday, Kneecap member Liam O'Hanna is in court accused of terror charges involving a flag and a London show. Yes, people, it is absolutely political. On Thursday, there will be a parole hearing for brothers Erik and Lyle Menendez. Now, this parole hearing has been made possible after an LA judge reduced their sentence in May of this year, making them eligible for parole after more than 30 years since they killed their parents. And there's obviously been a series of highly controversial documentaries looking into the notion that they were abused children and more. So Saturday, let me see what's going on. Oh, Saturday, Notting Hill Carnival starts. Yes, indeed. I'll be there next Monday. I will attempt, I think, to live stream at some stage, but don't hold me to it. I'll be here next Monday morning as usual, but don't hold me to it because once I get to Carnival, I'm partying and I like a good drink. And I don't want to be drinking on live on air, right? And so I hope you are all absolutely wonderful, tickety-poo and fine and dandy. Good. Right. What else? Interesting stuff. On Friday, we heard that the World Economic Forum had closed its investigation into its founder, Klaus Schwab, clearing him of any wrongdoing after an investigation was launched in April, accusing him of misconduct. Of course, he was cleared. He was investigated by his own organization. Meanwhile, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, another controversial character, of course, and Roche Holdings Vice Chair Andre Hoffman have been appointed to the roles of interim co-chairs while they decide on a replacement for Schwab. Would you like that job? Would you? Tweety Pie, is that the second super sticker, or am I confusing you with somebody else? Either way, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your generosity. I very much appreciate it. Yes, what a joke indeed. There no surprises there. No, indeed. No, indeed. And before we bring in our first guest at 9:10 or thereabouts, I want to quickly refer to this. I think this is interesting. Ricky Jones acquitted. I'm sure many of you remember this man, Labour Councillor Ricky Jones. He came to prominence last year when he was pictured at a protest in Walthamstow, East London, and he said far-right protesters should have their throats well, as many now know, on Friday, he was found not guilty of encouraging violent disorder after the jury took just half an hour to deliberate. Sounds like a foregone conclusion to me. This has infuriated many who have turned to that old favourite chestnut, Lucy Connolly, the Tory councillor's wife who was jailed for a bad tweet. And they've been making the comparison in what they see as Keir Starmer's two-tier society. Jones, let us not forget, drew his finger across his throat, called demonstrators disgusting Nazi fascists at an anti-racism protest in East London. And this followed the Southport murders at the hands of madman Axel Rudakabana. So, do we have a two-tier justice system, or is this really a ready-made state propaganda designed to continue carving up and dividing people? Well, yes, because everybody's doing, as I say, that thing of, well, it's not fair. If he's been let off, then Lucy Connolly must be let out. And so what happened with Lucy Connolly, of course, is that there's been a huge public debate over the fairness in the UK's judicial system. And people think it's incredibly unfair that he's got away with it, as many people see it. And Lucy Connolly was in prison for one tweet, which she deleted after a matter of hours. But I'm actually tired of that comparison. Lucy Connolly is not the only person imprisoned unfairly, and it's lazy to keep using her as an example. What about, for example, just one example, Zoe Rogers, a 21-year-old who was arrested during a Palestine action raid on a site by Israeli weapons manufacturer Elbit. Zoe has not been charged with a terrorist offence, but has been in detention inside HMP Bronzefield, the same place Lucy Letby is imprisoned, a high-security prison in Surrey, for over a year without charge. She was arrested before Palestine Action was a proscribed group, and she is one of 24 defendants in that same situation who have been denied bail and are just being held indefinitely. She has pleaded not guilty. Where are the voices calling for justice for these people being detained without charge? Where is the Free Speech Union? Or is it too busy representing people who just want to tick off Muslims? Either way, there is still something not okay about Jones being cleared and Lucy Connolly being inside, particularly when they were both reacting to the same events last summer. But I just say, there are many, many, many more people imprisoned unfairly, and Lucy Connolly ain't the only one. And it is starting to look very much like an agenda. Yes, indeed. Right. I want to welcome in my first guest. Jackie says, free the Filton 24. That's exactly it. What about the worker who filmed a protest on the way home from work? Absolutely. Absolutely outrageous. And bear in mind that today, actually, or this Friday and today marks the first year anniversary of the first imprisonments of these people. Some of them, as this commenter says, was imprisoned for simply filming protests taking place. Yes, indeed. Absolutely wrong. Egregiously wrong. Right. Let us talk about something much better. Thank you, Synchronized Soul. Not at all. Not at all. I appreciate that. The agenda is the end of jury trials. It is indeed May Day, when we don't want that situation at all. But you know what? Let's have a little bit of good news around here, because we don't get a lot of good news, do we? But let's have a little bit of good news. Let's bring in a man who's going to help deliver that. Here he is. Good morning, Tony Thompson. How are you?
Good morning, Sonia. Lovely to see you again. I hope you had a good break.
I did have a good break. I was laid up at one stage with
Oh,
funky foot, but aside from that, all is good here, Tony. Tony, I was delighted during my break to hear about some excellent news coming from your quarter. And let me just bring this up, because this is something, a press release from the CCRC that I wasn't anticipating anytime soon. The CCRC, of course, is the Criminal Case Review Commission, and they have referred the convictions of Clive Freeman finally to the Court of Appeal. Well done, Tony. Well done. Excellent work. What do you have to say about this, Tony?
Yeah, fantastic news. I mean, it's a bit like a steeplechase. We're not there yet, but we're in the final stages now. A week ago today, about this time, actually, I got the email from the CCRC giving me the decision that the committee of 3 commissioners had decided that there were sufficient grounds to refer the case to the Court of Appeal. So I had the great pleasure. I'd already set this up with the prison. I was expecting it on and around that date. So I went up to Lay Hill Prison within an hour or so from where I live, and went to see Clive and broke the news to him. And he gave me the biggest bear hug I'd ever had. And it was probably one of the happiest days of my life. It was fantastic to see the relief on him. And this was the sixth application going back to 2000. So yeah, fantastic news. I say we're not there yet, but we're a long way down that path.
You've all done so amazingly. There is obviously a fantastic team who have been working on this for a considerable period of time, and all of you together have done an amazing thing. Of course, Clive is, as described by the Daily Mail, a former polo playing landowner, spent 37 years in prison for a brutal murder which may never have happened. And of course, this is no disrespect to the dead man himself, Alexander Hardy, who was found in 1988. But the simple fact is that it looks highly likely that Clive Freeman was in prison for a crime that never happened. And as you've always been very keen to point out, because it's important too, and that is, if it did happen, he's far served his time anyway. Pick it up for me, Tony.
Yes, he was eligible for release on parole after 15 years. Well, he's now in his so that's 22 years plus since his tariff expired. But because he's been protesting his innocence ever since the day he was arrested in Australia in 1988, he's saying, I'm not leaving prison until I'm exonerated or until I leave in a box. And it's looking increasingly likely now that he won't leave in a box. He'll leave, certainly not immediately, but that's another issue, is to try and get him out on bail or on license, because the Court of Appeal hearing could be anything from 6 to 8 months. So that's another little area that I'm working on at the moment. But yes, I mean, a man died, but all the evidence is and has been for years. This isn't something that's, despite what the CCRC say in their press release, this was known in the first application. This is right. There's a whole range of things that will follow on from this. Everybody knows about the CCRC criticism of the CCRC following the case of Malkinson and others. Clive will be added to that list clearly. And their procedures in previous applications is just dire. I mean, they need to be dismantled and restructured, and because I think they have about 1,600 applications a year, and they put about 30 through to the Court of Appeal. Their success rate's abysmal, and that's why the Parliamentary Justice Committee gave them a good grilling, and the chief exec's gone. There's an interim chair, and the chief exec's gone as well. So there's some real structural changes needed to make some improvements, because I remember Andrew Malkinson coming out of the Court of Appeal, and he had a T-shirt and it said, "Innocent, I'm not the only one." But he certainly isn't the only one. Clive's another case, but there are a lot more. I've got a number of other cases that I'm dealing with that I'm currently looking at the moment. But there are certainly a lot of others that need looking at. And people get forgotten about once they're into the system.
Exactly.
It's easy for me to go in and out of prison to on arrangement to see people, and but it's hugely difficult to manage a case from the inside. And as I've seen from Clive's case, and say he's not the only one, that you get a poor police investigation, poor decisions by the Crown Prosecution Service. You get a legal support that's inadequate, particularly on legal aid, and the whole thing conspires against you, and you end up being stuck there for years and years unless you've got some supporters with family or others that are supporting you. You just get stuck and basically locked away. Clive's been fortunate that he's had some people helping him over the years, but his family are thousands of miles away in Africa. So he's not seen any of his family for over 30 years. He's got grandchildren he's never seen. It's hugely challenging for him. I mean, he's amazing. He's an amazing character, despite the troubles that he's had over the years. His resilience, which I know is a term that's used a lot these days, is amazing. And he's had highs and lows. He's certainly on a high at the moment, but it's my task at the moment. There's lots of stuff going on at the background to get all the documents, etc. I've got to speak. I've got one of the top one of the leading, if not the leading, defence barrister who wants to take his case. I can't reveal his name at the moment, but
until it's confirmed. Right.
Until it's confirmed, but I'm talking to him at the moment. He wants to do the case. It's something he wants to do. So hopefully there'll be some more news coming out shortly. So yeah, we're on a roll at the moment, but it's we've still got to get through the Court of Appeal. How can you've touched on it, but how can you spend over 37 years in prison for a non-offence? I mean, it's absolutely amazing. This is not where there's been a murder and we're looking for somebody who may have committed it and the wrong person was convicted. Right. This is no crime whatsoever, and you're banged up for over 37 years. Right. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's outrageous.
Yeah, exactly. And as you say, I kind of touched on it, but I did touch on the unfairness, of course, the disparities that we have in prison terms before you joined us, and this is one of them. But this is an amazing situation finally, because I've seen the slog that has taken place, all the brilliant people involved. It is hard work. I've been supporting this for 5 years, and there's a huge volume of work that took place. And I think that you absolutely made the difference. Your background is so important. You're, of course, a former police superintendent, transport police superintendent, right? You were there at the scene of the Paddington crash, and I think if anybody is able to navigate their way through this system, Tony, it's you. You were able to get the Daily Mail on board, and whatever anybody else thinks about the Daily Mail, when it decides to campaign, it can be incredibly effective. And I think that this has also been a deciding factor as well. Do we know what the decision actually centres on? Is it to do with pathology evidence?
Yes, I mean, the key ground for appeal is something that's been argued long before I got involved. It's all the experts. Another email's popped up now for a professor who has been involved right from the word go, saying that the man didn't die as alleged by the prosecution. So it's all around the fact that if there's no murder, if the man wasn't killed deliberately, then there's no offence, and all the other stuff drops away. There's a lot of detail in there, and what I've been able to do is sort of go back to basics, unpick it, and try and understand what the police were trying to do, try and understand how the evidence was presented to the jury. But there are lots of issues in this, and I'm hoping that once this gets through the Court of Appeal, I'll be calling for a statutory inquiry. There requires a statutory inquiry to look at why things went so badly wrong. Lots of people, and we're talking about people, we talk about failures in systems, but people that work in systems, it's people that make the decisions. So there's lots of people made wrong decisions, and they need to be held to account. And I'm not going to rest until I expose those.
You were talking about the CCRC, and obviously we've had Professor Michael Norton on with us before. I don't know if that was who the email popped up from, but Michael's been absolutely brilliant around this as well. We've talked extensively with him about the CCRC. And just going back to that, since they actually started in 1997, only 3% of applications have been referred to the appeal court. So first of all, phenomenally low number in that period of time. That's nearly 30 years. But if it is referred to the appeal court, what are the chances of that conviction being quashed or overturned?
Well, I haven't seen the statistics, but those that I have looked at, once they go to the Court of Appeal, the Court of Appeal usually follows the recommendations. So I think the success rate, once it gets there, is particularly high.
It's getting it there, which is the problem.
The big hurdle, because they spend so much time. They have to basically sit in the eyes of the Court of Appeal, sort of sitting in the chair and think, is there a real possibility that a jury presented with the evidence back in the day would have come to a different decision? And the decision will be, at the Court of Appeal, the conviction is unsafe. They don't sort of shout out, this man's exonerated. The conviction is unsafe for a whole range of reasons, and they will give their judgment. But the success rate at the Court of Appeal, once referral, is very high. So I'm confident about that. I mean, it's not 100% conclusive, but I think the evidence that's in there now and that's going in is very compelling, overwhelmingly compelling.
You're all doing an amazing job. Let me read some comments here. Jackie says, if the system wants to take you down, they will take you down. And it was, I mean, evident when you read the trial notes and what actually took place. It was almost inevitable that he would be convicted of it, because there were so many problems obviously at trial, which brings me to the next point. This is from Sean Parker. I'm sure you know Sean. He said, is Dr. Richard Shepherd still saying no comment? Dr. Richard Shepherd, of course, is a Home Office pathologist these days. I don't know if he was that then, but is he still saying no comment?
Yes, Dr. Shepherd was the pathologist for the Crown. He's retired now. He's about to start a roadshow around the country about his career. But clearly there were errors and omissions made at the time, which he failed to acknowledge, and he still seems to be sticking to his position. I mean, I've written to him on numerous occasions, and I've had no comment. I've had no reply. If we get public inquiry, then he'll be pulled up and he'll have to make some reply. But no comment. He's finished his work as a pathologist, as far as I can see, and he's now got his own roadshow going around theatres. And I'm not advertising it at all, but he's alive and kicking, but not practicing as a Home Office pathologist. As I know it.
How frustrating, though, that people can be so involved in making and being involved in the process of such huge life-changing measures of a person, and then they can just walk away, and then they can do their after-dinner circuit and all that. So I just find that so incredibly frustrating that people are very seldom held to account for the decisions that they make when they're in office. And I'm sure you do, as a former cop. I'm sure you do, Tony. But let us turn to something altogether more positive. I want to return back to when you were at Lay Hill last week with Clive, and because I just want to drill down a little bit more. I'm sure it was amazing for him. So you got to tell him. He didn't know before you told him.
No, he didn't know at all. He didn't know I was there. So I went in. I'd arranged for a room, and he came in, and I see him probably once a month in the prison anyway. And he came and he said, "Oh, what are you doing here?" And he looked quite glum. He thought I'd got some bad news, and I said, "We're on our way. You're going to the Court of Appeal." And it's like, wow. It's very hard to bottle that, but it was pretty emotional. Great film, great for him, because he's had so many rejections and so much disappointment and frustration, and it's hard
dealing
to say
with cancer.
Sorry,
and dealing with cancer as well on top of everything else.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's you can't, unless you've been there, you can't say, well, I understand, because you just can't understand. But it is just so much good news for him. But he's had so many disappointments. And going back to the CCRC, a lot of this evidence was available years and years ago. This is not, I haven't come up with a magic solution. I've sort of re-examined it, repositioned it, and put the argument perhaps slightly differently, and looked at the wider picture. Certainly some of the failures in the police investigation. But if you break it down to what happened at the time, then the pathology evidence to show that the man died from unlawful act just wasn't there. And it was, he was poorly represented by his defence. He didn't give evidence at trial for reasons connected to his family and his former life in Rhodesia. So he faced what I call a tsunami of prosecution evidence without anything being challenged. His alibi that he was clearly in another part of London when this took place was dismissed, and the jury didn't hear any side from him any explanation from him at all. So that's why they were out fairly quickly. But at the end of the day, to convict someone of murder, you've got to prove that somebody died from an unlawful act, and that the person that's convicted was the person that did it, and they failed to do that. Well, sorry, they got the conviction. It's just not just unsafe, it's plainly wrong.
I mean, it's quite phenomenal. There's been a suggestion for quite a long period of time now that there are political elements to this. What do you think about that?
Well, I've got ongoing investigations on that, but I can't comment at the moment. But yes, there's a backstory to this which I'm investigating.
Great work, wonderful stuff. Let me just read this. I'm emotional just hearing about it. Can't imagine how Clive must have felt. Indeed, I mean, it is emotional. It's nearly 40 years of somebody's life, and to then be told that at last there's a breakthrough, as you say, after six applications is just quite extraordinary. You're doing a fantastic job. We don't yet know a timeline, of course. As you say, it could be sort of how long is a piece of string, really, Tony, right?
Yes, I'm doing my best through various sources, trying to pull a few levers to say, look, this guy, we need him out of prison, pending, to give him a bit of life. He was 82 last month, and he's hobbling around. He's got issues with his knee. He's still tackling the prostate cancer. I mean, he'd actually stopped. He said to me, I've stopped treatment because there's no point in carrying on. And last week he said, I want to start it again. So that was a real, that was a bit emotional.
So he sees hope. That's amazing. That will take him to the next stage. I think this will be overturned. I would be absolutely astonished and shocked if it wasn't. And more power to your elbow and to everybody involved, Tony. Thank you so much for the work you're doing on behalf of him. Because, I mean, how much more noble can it be that you are out here fighting on behalf of somebody who wouldn't have a voice without you, without Aaron, without all of the people involved. So really, really wonderful, noble stuff. Send our love to Clive. Tell him we're rooting for him. Absolutely. And you are an absolute star. Thank you, Tony, said M. Good men need good men like you. Yes, indeed. Everybody, this is Tony Thompson. Come back soon, Tony, and tell us that this has been quashed and we will really party. Take good care of yourself. Wonderful to see you. Thank you so much. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. See, this is the stuff that counts. This is the stuff that really counts. And I'm so pride isn't the right word, but I'm really happy that we got behind this, 5 years ago. And we've never, since that point, we've never let up on it. Big shout out to Aaron. Aaron never gives up. Honestly, he doesn't. He's absolutely brilliant. And it's so wonderful when you have people out here fighting for people inside. So excellent stuff. Thanks, Tony, says Trevor. We need more people like you, Tony. Thank you, Marco. Indeed. Happy birthday. Happy birthday indeed. Wait. I think I've even got one of these. I know it's literally strictly not my birthday anymore. It was the 15th. But hey, in the Poulton household, we have birthdays that last a week. Yes, indeed, we do. And right, just before I bring in my next guest, I just want to say a big shout out to lovely Dr. Robert, not a doctor, from Health Freedom UK. He often is here on the chat. I think he's away at the moment. But I remember before talking about this, his CBD salve. It's honestly like I cannot tell you how brilliant this stuff is. And please support him because he's an independent small business, if he'd even be called that. But I cannot recommend this enough. When we were out last week for a birthday lunch, and I actually brought it out on the table, people just dipping into it, using it as hand cream on a really, really hot day. I've used it for all manner of dry patches. No, I'm not being paid to promote it. I'm just saying what fantastic stuff it is from Health Freedom UK. Thank you so much. Oh, Kath loves Robert Salvers. Oh, there he is. Health Freedom UK. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Well done. Good stuff. I love it. I love seeing small businesses rise up. Right. Many doctors these days don't seem to be doctors, says Cavan. Don't even get me started, Cavan. You have no idea what kind of journey I've been on, and I'm not looking for a fight this morning. Right. I want to bring in my next guest. He's a favourite. He's a favourite round here. Like all the stuff that was happening over the weekend, I was like, there's only one person. There's only one person for this. And here he is. Let's bring him in. Warren Thornton, geopolitical journalist. How are you, Warren, mate?
I am absolutely fine, Sonia, and can I just wish you a belated, very happy birthday?
Thank you, darling. Thank you. I appreciate that very, very much. And it's funny, isn't it? Because like when I was a child, it really meant so much, right? I don't look at it in the same way anymore. But I'm really glad I don't, because the weight of expectation that you have around birthdays can actually be quite oppressive in their own way. Because if you're not doing anything special, you feel that you're missing out, right? That feeling of missing out. Thank you, Curly Crew. I appreciate all your wonderful messages, but I was really fortunate. I remain really fortunate. I have lots of wonderful, loving people around me. And there you go. And thank you for being here, Warren. Thank you for being here. We've got so much to talk about, mate, but I think we have to start off with a video you sent me. And I think you're one of the few people who actually spotted this, because I was looking and to see who else has noted this. So let's play it, right? This is, of course, of US politician Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, she was giving an interview about all the stuff that's going on with Zelensky, etc. And I have to say, this is the howler of all howlers. Let's have a listen. This is Warren noted this.
Launched that massive drone attack on Russia right before this meeting because he's doing everything he can to prolong the war, because as long as the war is going on, he still maintains his grip on power.
So as long as the war is going on, he still maintains his grip on powder. I mean, if that is not just the most wonderful slip-up, I have to wonder whether do you think she did that deliberately?
I think it was a slip of the tongue, but you never know in today's world, do you? And my grateful thanks for you having me on my show and all your wonderful listeners. If it was on purpose, then it was a bit masterful. If it wasn't, then it's the howler of the year. But
where's he gone? Yeah, go on. Sorry, I meant to click her off, and I clicked you instead. Right, go on.
Many people make these Freudian slips, don't they? So it is. How can I put this? And she's not wrong. He's just desperate to hang on to power. Literally, the mainstream media meltdown over the weekend was quite incredible and quite disgraceful. Really, sort of makes you sort of worried to be a journalist. Really, in today's day and age. Thank God we've got people like you.
Oh, and you, absolutely right. So much to discuss. Let's get discussing then. So, first of all, of course, this was the original coalition of the willing back in May. European leaders, they're all jetting off to the White House today. But let's talk first of all about Putin and Trump and their Alaska meeting. I've heard so much kind of mis and disinformation around it. What's your take, Warren? It's going to be far more educated than a lot of what's being said.
So it's very, very simple. The oblasts that the Russians currently occupy, they're gone. Time for a dose of realism. Putin didn't move in any way from the three main tenets that he wanted. America didn't really have any cards here. They would like to normalize relations. It's no surprise that they had this meeting, Sonia, while Lindsey Graham and everybody else was sidelined. If you notice, they didn't take Kellogg, whose daughter, once again, who runs an NGO literally for mercenary soldiers fighting in Ukraine. He didn't take Kellogg with him. This is a war hawk who is totally backing Ukraine. The Russians didn't want it. Of course, everybody's having a meltdown because it looks as though there might be a chance of Russia getting exactly what they want. Now, Europe just want to keep on fighting. They want to keep the gravy train going, and as does Zelensky. Zelensky knows that once this war's over, so is he, because the Ukrainians... But what we have to remember here, Sonia, is he turned around at the end of this meeting and said, next time come to Moscow. And Trump turned around and said that might be difficult. Now, why would that be difficult? There are two world leaders here trying to find a peaceful solution to a war that America started. They've lost. They are trying to get out with a deal and the best possible outcome for Ukraine. They had a deal in 2022. They didn't take it. Europe and Zelensky should not make this mistake a second time.
Lots has been said about that meeting, that a lunch was cancelled, that there were some strange things going on in the room, that Caroline Levitt and Steve Witkoff, they kind of left the room looking really ashen, as if something awful had just taken place. But what is this? Is this some kind of distraction tactic that we're being subjected to by Western media?
Yes, it is. And of course, all we heard I did smile because when he first climbed up onto the podium after he'd shaken hands with Donald Trump, of course, when they were on the podium at the airport for photographs, you had these idiot activist reporters shouting out, are you going to stop killing civilians and all the rest of it? And at that moment, you saw Putin put his hand to his ear. He heard full well. He's a very clever guy. And people say that they study Putin, but they actually don't. He's a very clever guy. And he thought, there's no talking to these people. In Russia, we have respectful press conferences. People put their hand up. They ask their question when selected. And then they get their answer. People screaming out like that is not done the Russian way. And at that moment, it was quite clear that Putin decided there's going to be no questions after this press conference because it is pointless to do so. So they can thank that silly screech owl for what she said.
So obviously yesterday what we see Zelensky rock up in, I think it was Brussels, with Ursula von der Leyen so that she can hold his hand to the White House. And they're all heading off to the White House again for this whole coalition of willing thing today with Trump. But what do you think? So obviously, presumably they're hoping to have an end to hostilities between Russia and Ukraine. Is that it, Warren?
No, they want it on their terms. Very, very simply, they want to try and convince Trump that he's doing the wrong thing. They're taking to, basically to change Zelensky's nappy, I think, because simply they're going to hold his hand here. What use are they whatsoever? The coalition of the willing is nothing of the sort. Security guarantees. If they were willing, what you have to remember here, Sonia, you have over 60s. Being grabbed off the street, civilians, and thrown onto the front lines against the Russians. Zelensky has begged every single country in the European Union for proper troops to come and fight. Every single one of them have said no. This is a coalition of the unwilling, not the willing.
So, as I say, the last meeting was May the 10th. We were subject to that very weird thing where they had the telephone conversation with Trump. And also the last time, if I remember correctly, that Zelensky was in the White House, he was kind of handed his posterior, wasn't he? It was a horrible mess going on. Do you think it's going to be more cordial today than then?
I think Zelensky has to. I mean, he's still saying that he wants a peace now. A ceasefire now. Ceasefire now is off the table. It was always off the table. Russia were never going to agree to it because they did that twice with the Minsk Accords, and even Mitterrand and Merkel turned around and said the only reason we accepted the Minsk agreement was to give time to arm Ukraine. The Russians are not going to fall for that again. So there's going to be no ceasefire. And indeed, if you want a ceasefire, why do you not want peace straight away where we could sort out a peace deal? Those territories are gone. You're not getting them back. In the end, Sonia, you can end up losing 8, 9 oblasts instead of the 4 you're already going to lose.
Right. And what a collection that will be rocking up today. There'll be Keir Starmer. There'll be, as I say, Ursula von der Leyen. There'll be German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. There'll be Emmanuel Macron from France. This picture taken in May kind of reminds me of a sort of Reservoir Dogs Gone Wrong type picture, really. So I think the idea, though, isn't it like a show of unity amongst European leaders to try and strong arm Trump, which is a ridiculous idea. If anybody can strong arm Trump, I'd like to see it. But I think that's what it is, really. It's just kind of like showing force, isn't it? Them all coming together, this coalition of the unwilling, as you call them.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And I mean, he's meeting one-on-one with Zelensky. So Trump has turned around and said, you can travel if you like, we'll all have dinner afterwards. But the meeting with Zelensky will be one-on-one. So you've got Starmer, literally, who's going to go, I suppose, to free the sausages. Macron's going to have a look what a real wife looks like, I suppose, when he meets Trump. Then, of course, and then Stubb's going to go and carry his golf bag, literally, for him. Maloney's going there just to say hello to Elon Musk. Zelensky's going to be left out in the wind. And, of course, Merz, who turned around and said America should be careful. That'll be interesting. Probably he's just carrying the spoon for the bag they had on the train that day.
I see. Interesting. But let us not forget that he likes to remain in powder. Right. So I want to bring your attention to this other story, which is weird, gaining a lot of traction. Let me bring it up on the screen. Senior Israeli cyber official questioned in Las Vegas over alleged sexual solicitation of a minor. These are a couple of headlines from Israel. Israeli cyber directorate employee arrested in US on suspicion of paedophilia. So what we are talking about is an Israeli government cybersecurity official who was arrested by Las Vegas police and other authorities in Nevada who were conducting an undercover investigation aimed at online users who were seeking to sexually prey on children. He is Tom Artyom Alexandrovich, and it's weird, right? He was released from custody on a $10,000 bail after initial court appearance, and then Israel government have spent rather a lot of time denying that he was ever involved. Pick it up for me, would you?
Yeah, well, he is the top Israeli cyber official who was obviously arrested in Las Vegas for sex crimes, but has been allowed to escape to Israel. Now, he's the acting head of the Israeli National Cyber Directorate's Data and AI division, and he was detained for an operation, in a sting operation, targeting online child predators. Now, he literally was released from custody and allowed to return to Israel with a $10,000 bail. The Israeli Prime Minister's office has said that Alexandrovich traveled to the US for professional matters, but claimed he was not arrested and returned to Israel as scheduled. Now, it's quite clear that he was arrested. There is an arrest record of it. And the professional matters in question were ostensibly the Black Hat Briefing cybersecurity conference in Las Vegas. However, Alexandrovich's LinkedIn profile has been scrubbed. The INCD say he has been put on leave. So that's a big heads up there. And of course, he played a key role in designing and building Israel's Cyberdome, which was ostensibly meant to protect civilian cyberspace. Of course, he is now in all sorts of trouble. And of course, they're doing their very best to cover it up. But of course, people like yourselves are now highlighting it, and absolutely right.
Absolutely right. And in fact, there are obviously details. He was arrested along with 7 other men in the city of Henderson near Las Vegas. All of the suspects believed that they were meeting minors, but instead it was undercover officers. They were all brought to jail. They were taken into custody. And it's interesting because among those suspects includes a Las Vegas church pastor, Neil Harrison, the local CBS affiliate. No, that's not right. And actually, no, I haven't got any other names, but yes, a local church pastor. But what I wanted to bring you to, which I think is interesting, because obviously we're talking about a cybersecurity person here, but it would appear that there are some issues with Grok. Grok, of course, is Elon Musk's AI tool.
Yes.
And it would appear that there has been some Grok interference to do with this issue. Do you know anything about it? I can tell you about it if you don't.
No, I don't. But do shoot away. But I know there has been issues with Grok, because at one time it's been neo-Nazi, and at other times it has, of course, sided with Palestine. It got taken down, shut down for 2 days because, of course, it was agreeing that Israel were carrying out a genocide.
Well, what was interesting was somebody had this running conversation with, I think it's a guy called Jake Shields. He's a former boxer, I believe, and he's very much anti-Zionist. And he had a conversation with it in which it evolved that actually, I'm going to read it. Israeli Las Vegas paedophile was behind shutting Grok down. Grok confirmed to Jake Shields that the Israeli cyber chief under Netanyahu, who was charged with paedophilia, later released by the Trump administration and fled to Israel, was responsible for shutting Grok down. The conversation is very interesting. And so they are actually saying that there has been online interference at the hands of an online Supremo who is now alleged to have been involved in these offences to do with a minor. That's troubling, isn't it, if we start to get that kind of level of interference taking place?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to, of course, the people who do this sort of thing, you're only as good as the programmer who puts the program in. Right. I always say this. It is quite incredible because for a bit of fun the other day, Sonia, I was putting myself and Lembit into Grok and asking them, and some of this, I mean, Grok absolutely hates us for telling the truth. So it is quite clear that this is an establishment-led AI, or certainly prompted by the establishment. And of course, that means it's an untrustworthy source. And you do get people, this is where you get stupidity, Sonia, is you do get people turn around and go and asking Grok, why would you ask an AI, artificial intelligence, primed by a government?
It's astonishing. And these are people who often consider themselves kind of much more knowledgeable and awake than the vast majority of other people. And yet they are turning. It's just, it is actually extraordinary. But anyway, so we shall see what comes from this. But it certainly appears that this man was rescued and returned to Israel. Toot sweet. That would appear to have been the case, wouldn't it? What is happening in Gaza at the moment? Because last week, so they had more than 100 organizations signed a letter, said they've been unable to deliver a single truck of humanitarian supplies to Gaza since the 2nd of March. Then there is a YouTube advertising campaign on behalf of Israel saying the UN have been blocking them. I don't know how true that is. And then, of course, there is this whole thing now they are preparing to move in and practically seize Gaza almost completely. What is going on there right now? Because the level of starvation, I can't believe we're still ignoring it.
It is quite incredible. And of course, there's nowhere left for them to go because of simply the fact they're just herding them into smaller and smaller numbers. And then when they do, they're dropping rockets and bombs on them. They bombed a school only yesterday. They hit it with a couple of missiles and, of course, killed quite a few people, including children. Now, there is no doubt whatsoever that these aid trucks are being steered by the Israelis into an area where they have these Muslim units, shall we say, fighting on behalf, paid by Israel. And they, of course, are then taking that aid and blocking it, and, of course, from getting to the people. So the situation is not getting any better. When the aid actually arrives there, we've had the whistleblower, one of the whistleblowers who was working for the company that was this US company that was distributing the aid, saying that they were deliberately targeting people, shooting them in the crowd just to keep order, what they thought was keeping order. And of course, this is nothing but a cynical land grab. They intend to annex this as part of the Greater Israel Project. This is Zionist lunacy, which is always going to be part and parcel. These people don't want peace. They want these people off the land. And very, very simply, the dying and the killing is going to keep happening. Now, bear in mind, this is an absolute genocide, Sonia, but I'm also going to draw a comparison where we're talking well up to 400,000 people are dead at least in Gaza.
Wow.
There's always more, Sonia. We've known people, our people literally turn around and say that there are 3 times or twice as many people normally dead in the conflict as are actually put out there, because there's bodies that you don't find, there's bodies that got rid of, they're buried under rubble, they're burnt, they're actually disposed of, or they simply aren't found, or they're blown to pieces. So it's always you double the figures of the people that have died in any conflict. If they're saying 200,000, it's 400,000.
And I thought it was interesting, this kind of like suggestion of a timetable that has been mooted by the Israeli government, because what they're saying is they're not prepared to give an exact timetable of when the forces would enter Gaza City, but it's saying that Benjamin Netanyahu is reported to want the entire city under Israeli occupation by the 7th of October. The 7th of October, of course, is the anniversary, isn't it, from 2023? Yeah. And I think all of that's it's kind of like there's something that just it puts the hair up on the back of my neck. It's almost like it was all planned, Warren.
Yeah. It is one of those, isn't it? When you look at it and you go, this is the most watched area in the world, Sonia. Okay, yeah. So we're talking, they've got night vision goggles, they've got bunkers, they've got people watching through binoculars. The idea that a bulldozer and a couple of gyrocopters can get through a fence that is that well patrolled, that is that well watched, is nonsense. And of course, there is no question. And you have to remember that they've got these Muslim groups who will carry out these sorts of things, which then give you a trigger to go and do this. The idea that they didn't respond for many, many hours afterwards and just allowed them to run around and do whatever they wanted is absolute nonsense. And of course, people go, oh, Israel have a right to defend themselves. Yes, they do. They don't have a right to slaughter children. They don't have a right to slaughter civilians. October, people go, oh, can you condemn Hamas for October the 7th? So I'll condemn what happened on October the 7th. Can you condemn what's happened on October the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and on and on and on?
And all the days prior to that as well, and all the centuries and the generations prior to that. Absolutely. We need help. People talking sense, says Chunky Buster. Yeah, Chunky Buster, you'll get that round here. We like to do that. It's our thing. Thank you for that, Warren. Before you leave us, I want to ask you about something much, much lighter. JD Vance has been in my part of the country. I was born and raised in the Cotswolds. He's been there. There's been protests. The bull at Charlbury. The staff refused to serve him. Now, I'm of the mind that if people refuse to serve you, that should be okay. But you think it's outrageous, don't you? Go on. Tell me your thoughts on it.
And I'll tell you why it's outrageous. So a gentleman goes in to eat there who denies that there's climate change. Suddenly, these woke people decide, oh, we're not going to serve him either. A person who's non-vaccine, you are paid to. You're at somebody else's business. You want to do it at your own business, that's fine. But you're impacting somebody else's business. So if you want to, I totally agree. I wouldn't want JD Vance or American politicians, because of what's happening in Gaza, in my restaurant either. If it's my business, I get to choose to decide. But here's the thing. You are paid to do a job of work. If you want to go and protest, I'm 100% behind you. But your place of work is not the place to do it, because you're ruining somebody else's business. And at the end of the day, where do we draw the line? There's a Russian here today eating. We're not having that because we support Ukraine. Suddenly, you've got activists. And remember that Larry Fink is one of those persons that said, we have to have forced behaviours at the World Economic Forum and at BlackRock. We have to force these behaviours on employers.
That's true.
This is where you get the LGBTQ and everything else from, the pronouns in the bios and everything else. If you are not paid at work to bring your activism, you're paid to serve dinner.
Well, I think that's very clear where you stand on that one. I should say that in terms of hospitality staff, there is something that actually does protect them. If they are objecting to something that is on the basis of a protected characteristic according to the Equality Act, then they are well within their rights. When I did work in hospitality a very long time ago, I refused to serve local fox hunters. Right. So yeah. I refused to. I said, I'm not doing that. But they were still allowed to have their drinks and everything at the pub. Other people served them. I just didn't. But yes. You thought it was an extreme reaction. It was. So the thing is, the other thing, of course, is that he's he came to the UK. There was that whole thing with Thomas Skinner. Have you acquainted yourself with the Thomas Skinner character who is all over the place now on Strictly? He went for beers with JD Vance. He's kind of appeared to have come out of nowhere, supposed to be very working class, but actually went to a private school and lived in a $250,000 home, as you do, because everybody wants to be working class nowadays, darling.
Yes.
So interesting stuff. Warren, what's going on this week for you?
So what you need to look out for is the media complete meltdown that is going on. That is going to be going on once we've had this meeting and Trump has laid down the law. They're going to be trying to turn him around. So all eyes will be on that. Please keep an eye on Serbia. George Soros and the EU are trying to overthrow the Serbian government there over the collapse, obviously, of the train station that caused a few deaths there. And of course, the Iran situation is not finished. The Houthis, I am being told, have just boarded another ship. So, of course, there'll be another one of them at the bottom of the ocean very shortly because the Israelis targeted the Yemeni power station, blew that up, and the Houthis have responded by taking over another ship. So there's that. There's Serbia to look at. Do have a little look at the Zangezur corridor as well. The Americans have just rented that for the next 100 years. That has a border with Iran. And of course, Azerbaijan and Armenia will now be helping to try and overthrow Georgia so that they can, in the north, so they can get a coast on the Black Sea. And of course, that gives Mossad, CIA and MI6 every chance to go into Iran and start blowing up infrastructure.
Wonderful to have you with us today. Always really good that you bring such clarity to world events. Everybody, this is Warren Thornton. You can find him at warrenthornton.com. Is it 6 or 7 p.m. you are on in the evenings?
It is 6 p.m. in the evenings. The first hour is free to air, of course. And then we work with Lembit, who sends you his love with Unprecedented TV. And they put our show on. But of course, if you want to see the full show, which is over 2 hours, come to warrenthornton.com.
There you go. Absolute star. Warren Thornton, everybody. Have a fantastic week. Love to you and yours, Warrington. Warren, take good care of yourself, love. Lovely to see you. Lovely. Wonderful. Thank you, darling. And there he goes. There he goes and there he blows. And my son is 34 today and he's coming to have lunch with his mum. Happy birthday to your son, Louisa. Wonderful to hear that. And Jane, you asked me about Shepherd, right? Yeah, I think he was on the Jay Slater case. I'm pretty sure that he was the Home Office pathologist before he retired on the Jay Slater case. Pretty sure about that. Right. Good to have Warren with us today. Lively as ever. Brill Warren, thank you, says Maggie Mac. Oh, Cavan said, I don't believe in climate change or vaccines, so basically I won't get served anywhere then. Stephen wants to know how these elites live so long. Most ordinary people usually croak in their 70s. Yes, indeed. Right. Okay. Where are we going to next? I think actually I've got 5 minutes before I bring in my next guest. So I want to briefly talk about reform. Reform, of course, is a political party. And can I just say I was way ahead of Nigel Farage, who runs the party. I was way ahead of his opponents. His current opponents are Rupert Lowe, who left the party, Tommy Robinson, who was dissed by Farage, Ben Habib, who also left the party. I have long said that Nigel Farage was not the man to lead a political party, and certainly not in my country. Right. But the thing is, they are kind of all the same breed and type. And I know my next guest is already supporting one of those people, but that's fine because we are allowed freedom of expression around here, which is a wonderful thing. But I want to talk about reform and I want to talk about the race for the mayor of London and the individual who thought he was a reform shoo-in has been dumped and not before time. So celebrity soldier Ant Middleton. I wonder if I have a picture of him around here. Maybe not. Maybe I don't. Let me just see if I can bring in a picture just to remind any of you whom he is. Let's have a look. Let's have a looky. Let's have a look. Oh, there he is. So I want to bring these two people in. So this is the man who thought he was going to run for mayor of London. And this is the woman who has replaced him. It's an interesting story. So Ant Middleton has a bit of a history, kids. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that. He was in prison for 14 months for assaulting a police officer. He was banned from being a company director. He was sacked by Channel 4, which actually probably is an honor. And there's lots that I cannot recommend about this man, including the fact that he tweeted what I think is a very dangerous tweet indeed. And he said, on the 13th September, I will ask something of the British public, British patriots that I would never ask of if I weren't willing to lead the charge. If certain individuals can ask for our throats to be slit, and that is obviously with reference to what's happened with Ricky Jones getting off. He said, if certain individuals can ask for our throats to be slit with zero accountability or repercussions, then that allows us free rein to defend ourselves in such a manner that will rattle foreign hostiles and our government to the very core. Choose a side because this is ultimately what it has come down to. See you on the 13th September and prepare your shields. 13th September, of course, is the gathering that Tommy Robinson has organised. And while I can cut Robinson some slack to a degree, because I do believe that whatever you think about him, people sincerely support him. But some of the hangers-on around him, like Lawrence Fox, Ant Middleton, no, not at all. But Ant Middleton there is clearly calling for a riot. And I don't trust people who do stuff like that because this is clearly problem, reaction, solution. And I think that what this man is in danger of doing is leading people into a situation of martial law. And it's really problematic. And I think he's furious because he was hoping to be the Mayor of London candidate in an attempt to try and obviously see off Sadiq Khan. And what Reform have done is can you believe this? Reform have replaced him with a Muslim candidate, which it kind of makes me smile because I don't support any of it, but I just think it's quite interesting. But we're hearing things like Tommy Robinson says that he'll get behind Ant Middleton running independently, standing as an independent. I will back him 100%. London needs a strong man. Yeah, but you don't live in London. You won't be able to vote, mate. That's not how it works. And I don't know if you'll be able to vote from your Sun Lounger on some sunny destination or another. And but what's interesting is that the person, so Layla Cunningham, she defected from the Tories in June 2025. She's a Tory councillor in a flagship London borough, and she defected from the Tories to Reform UK. And she currently represents quite a wealthy area, Lancaster Gate, on Westminster City Council. And she said that she quit the Conservatives because she was tired of defending failure. And the problem is Aunt Middleton is all about, yeah, let's bash them up, let's do all this. It's all really kind of like quite violent rhetoric. And that is not clearly, I don't support reform, but that's clearly not what they're looking for. They're not hoping for that. Now, I heard Layla Cunningham in a TV interview, and I found her very interesting. She made a very simple point, and she made it very well. And this is what she said, and I absolutely echo what she's saying. She said her problem is that unvetted men are being put down in villages and towns, and they could be anyone. And what she said is, and she's quite right, is that most of us are not automatically assuming that these people are rapists or murderers and that they're going to harm us, but we don't know. And we must know, because you cannot have undocumented, unvetted strangers running around in your country when there's already so many problems that we're dealing with. And when she said that, I thought that's very interesting. And I found that interesting. And sometimes I'm not necessarily interested in politics, but in the individuals involved, because even individuals within political parties can make a difference. Now, I'm not going to suddenly rush out and start voting reform, but I thought that what she had to say was very interesting, and I was interested. And there you go. Voting is futile, says Ian. I mean, I tend to agree, frankly. But the party faithful are absolutely up in arms. They're like, oh, my God, they've removed, this legendary soldier. I'm not sure if he ever was, but they've removed this, veteran and replaced with a Muslim immigrant. I don't think she's a Muslim immigrant. She was born at St. Mary's Hospital in Paddington, which is where my daughter was born. And she grew up here. And I think that this whole attack, this constant attack on people who aren't white is really deplorable. And I cannot bear it. I saw Mad Lawrence Fox going on about how juries from now on, there should be no brown people who are judging white people, right? I mean, you are married to a mixed race woman. How does she feel about these level of awful pronouncements, Mr. Fox? What a waste of space that man is. Shug says voting is the theft of consent to commit crime in your name. And Jan will vote Reform UK. Supports Farage. And the fact is that if you sideline reform, you will continue on Labour and the Tories' road to extinction. Is this what you want? No, Jan, but what you want is this kind of like compliance politics, right? And because that's what you're doing, everything, when people say, if you didn't vote, you have no say. Actually, I would argue that if you vote, you have no say because you got us in this mess. But Jan, we like freedom of speech around here. And that is exemplified with my next guest. Absolutely it is. How are you, Charlotte? How are you, love? Hope you are well. And right, let me bring in my next guest. As I say, freedom of speech is really honoured and cherished around here. It's one of the most important things that we have, and we must do everything that we can humanly possible to hold on to it. So let me welcome in Paul Burgess. Paul Burgess has been with us many times before. How are you, Paul?
Okay, doing very well.
Lovely to have.
By the way, I'm now a member of the College of Advance UK. So
is that Ben Habib's thing?
That's right.
Oh, yeah. So
That's
I said,
right.
I thought you were supporting that as well. So, the thing about Wake Up, right, is that I often invite on guests that I'm not necessarily politically aligned with, but being politically homeless, that's kind of hard to be politically aligned with anybody. So it's kind of like, I'm open to all ideas and what everybody has to say, but you're not here actually to talk about politics, but about something else that I'm really passionate about. And so let me just start by saying this. You and I agree on a great deal of things, Paul. Yep. Absolutely, we do. And that is, you show the lies of the net zero agenda, the climate change industry, the deliberate destruction of farming. You talk about the ESG, the environment, social governance. You talk about climate alarmists. I mean, brilliant stuff. But one of the things that I think you and I disagree on is the issue of chemtrails, right?
Yes,
you think they are bunkum conspiracy theorist nonsense, and I don't. And so what started this is, let me read you this letter, this email. In January this year, you hosted, if in fact introduced me to Paul Burgess. I followed Paul ever since. He recently published a video about chemtrails. Suffice to say, you're in opposite camps on this one. This is the video. Watch the video. My challenge is to host Paul again, but this time primarily on the subject of his analysis of the chemtrail concerns, and have it out. Would you please? And that was Thomas. Now, because I do believe in free speech, just because you and I may disagree, which actually the more I looked into it, Paul, the less I realized that we actually disagreed on this, but we'll get to that. And right. I said, absolutely. But so I approached you and I said, would you be prepared to, let's do a debate. Let's bring in some of the people that I've had who have been incredibly passionate, right? Who have said this has happened and chemtrails was happening over C-19. It was all part of the cover up and they're doing this and they're dropping this. I thought absolutely brilliant. Paul, I can tell you officially, I approached every single person that I have talked to over the last 5 years and have given a platform regarding their ideas to do with chemtrails, and not one agreed to come on. And I made it very clear this was not going to be a legacy media debate. It was not going to be a gotcha. It was going to be two intelligent people having a discussion and see what emerged from that. Now, first of all, I would just say that I don't automatically think that people are cowards if they refuse to debate with you. There are different reasons why people would refuse. Yes. Some believe that can be tricky in a live debate, and words can get lost and information can get lost. Others told me that the time given is not enough. Somebody said to me they needed 90 minutes. I said, I don't see, that's just not feasible at this moment in time. But so I just thought, damn it, sod it. I'm going to bring Paul on because at least he is prepared to be here live and actually face Q&As. And I asked people to send in questions for you, Paul. Yeah. And so just to say, I watched that video, and it is fair to say that your viewers were largely deeply upset and alarmed by it. I think many were kind of on the point of saying, have you sold out on us? They couldn't get it because you've been so brilliant in their eyes in terms of exposing the climate hoax. They couldn't get it. But then the more I looked at it, the more I listened to it, you're not outright saying geoengineering is not happening. You are acknowledging certain events that have taken place, Paul, right?
Yes, I actually detail the attempts. I actually am against and want a law to ban all geoengineering, right? All of it, including weather modification.
Right. Tell us your position.
Right. My position is very simple. First of all, I follow the truth and evidence. No matter what I do, I follow evidence. So I was aware when I made that video that some people, because I've never discussed chemtrails before that video, right? And the reason is because the theories are ridiculous, right? So I've been invited to have debates, and I've said, yeah, let's have a debate. But every time I push that forward, the other side collapses. The other side won't do it. And all I ask for before a debate is define your position and I'll define mine. Because I don't want to go around the roseberry bushes. I want to deal with the subject. Now, my position is very clear. First of all, there are some nuttish people in this world, Bill Gates is one, who actually advocate geoengineering as if we're going to change the climate. Yeah. So I'm against that. Have they tried to do that? Well, certain people have tried to do that in California, in America. There's been... how can I put it? Unregulated attempts at geoengineering. Yeah. Geoengineering in the sense of weather modification, which is not climate, rainfall, has been going on for 100 years. So no one's arguing with that. And they do it in the Middle East. An example of that would be before the May Day parade in Russia, they used to try to do rain cloud seeding before that to get rid of the moisture, because it only works if there's moisture there. And it's still practiced in the Middle East. So what I did was I detailed all I could find of that evidence. Yes. I then examined, and what had triggered this was the £50 million from Mad Ed Miliband to do some geoengineering experiments, which is nuttish. And I found out we'd managed to put 400 grams of SO2, sulfur dioxide, into the atmosphere with an experiment. 400 grams, less than half a kilo, at a great expense. But what we were doing was trying to find out how we could dispense it. This is a nuttish waste of money, right? So what I did then was I actually looked at what nature's done for us. Yeah. So I've detailed all of this in the video. And what nature's done is in Tambora, the biggest volcanic explosion in the last 11,000 years was in 1516, and it gave us the year without a summer. Yeah. And it put in, now we're talking 400 grams and things, and it put in the atmosphere, I've got it here, it put in 60 million tons of SO2, of the sulfates. So it put 60 million tons. And that resulted in a lowering in temperature of the Earth for about a year of less than half a degree. Now, to do that, to geoengineer that, and that's a tiny effect, it wouldn't have the effect people want, because actually heated up some places and super cooled others. UK was cooled by about 2.5 degrees. So to do that, you'd need 3,381 jumbos, all fitted out with tanks, yeah, flying every day for a year, 3,381 every day. Now, to compare that, today in the world, we have about 240, 250 jumbo flights a day. We would now need 3,381, and the cost would be over 7 trillion a year, maybe 8 trillion a year. So I say it's not feasible. So what I established in the video is, look, geoengineering is not even feasible, right? It's just not feasible. It is stupid. It is wrong. I also end up saying I clearly want a law to ban all geoenginering, because I don't believe we should be spraying any pollutants into the atmosphere. Yeah, right, and so on. But then I will not talk. I can't give in to something that's illogical. Now, I had a friend with me. I haven't seen him for years, a few years, and he came out to my home yesterday for a coffee, and he actually believed in this thing. And again, I think he was a bit surprised that he couldn't defend it, you know, and most people can't. Now, on climate and everything else, I have arranged for debates. I've arranged for a debate in the Isle of Man School, the only big school there. And the government cancelled it and send in their propaganda people the next day. No one debates me on anything. I'm Billy No Mates when it comes to debates. Now, right.
Let me stop.
I don't mind being wrong, by the way, because
no, I don't either. I don't either. Let me start asking you some of the questions, right? Yeah. So let me start off with Sarah. She said, clearly, there has been a big change in the sky in my lifetime. The sky did not zigzag in the way that it is doing now. What are these white lines, Paul?
The contrails. Let me explain that. You see those parallel lines across the sky there? Basically, at different layers, different heights in the atmosphere, you're going to get different amounts of water vapor. Now, when you put something out into that, a particle, for the water vapor to gather around, you get a water droplet, which you see. And so there's a normal contrails. Now, if you've got, in her lifetime, I don't know how old Sarah is, but let's say she's 50. Right? In the last 50 years, the amount of increase in air traffic has been incredible. And we have these traffic lanes. Now, all of those parallel lines can actually be the same traffic lane. Actually, the same one.
But the reason that doesn't stack up, I'm going to interject there. The reason that doesn't stack up is because if that were the case, then it would happen more often. I live near flight paths, right? I live near Heathrow, but it's only very particular days. And I know it's to do. People say it's to do with the heat and the temperature and all these various other things, but if you watch it consistently over a period of days that are of similar temperature and similar number of airplanes, you don't always get the same effect. So how do you account for that?
Very simple, because you're just looking at the surface for surface things. The height these planes fly at is such, 30,000, 25, 30, 40,000 feet in that sort of range. That height, you get totally different direction of wind, by the way, and you can even get into the jet stream up there. And that varies incredibly. Now, if you look, all that's happening here, let's take, on that picture's a good one, is when you take off and you leave a contrail, the next plane behind you on the same path, that wind's traveling up there at 150, 200 miles an hour. So as you leave your contrail, it'll get displaced to one side. The next plane on the same path will do another one, and so on. And then underneath that, you can have the occasional grid where the planes go in the other direction. because all this is air traffic lanes at different heights. And so it's perfectly reasonable to see what you're seeing. And you wouldn't have seen that before because you wouldn't have had the intensity of traffic. And secondly, you can't tell from the ground what the water vapor in the atmosphere and what layer it is, etc. So that's it. But don't forget what the opposite to what you're saying is, what you're really arguing is that somehow these commercial flights have got tanks in them. And this is ridiculous. Let's look at that. So let's look at what they're claiming. Tanks in them. Now, if you have an aeroplane with a tank in the back that's dispelling liquid, the actual nose, the weight will reduce and the nose of the plane will it'll go out of trim. And the only way you can counter that on a plane is your flaps to try to bring it up again, the trim. And you can do things like that, but that reduces the speed of the plane incredibly. And so it is impossible. It is physically impossible. You see, the fuel in aeroplanes is in the wings for a reason. Because when it uses up in the wings, that's what it is, the fulcrum for an aeroplane. So it uses up the fuel in the wings, like my finger's coming down now, and that doesn't change the trim. You can't have tanks at the back of aeroplanes. Now, there are certain aeroplanes in the UK equipped to do this, and they have tanks all through them, but they have to dispense the liquids. And this is, say, for Coast Guard work, for pollution events where they're spraying to minimize oil spills and that. And in that case, they would equalize it, the system equalizes it so the plane stays in trim. But the whole fuselage is taken up with it. And so just seeing things like this is just people not understanding the physics of what they're seeing. That's all. So that is not proof. But you've also got to give me the other side. This lady, Sarah, whoever she is, has got to give me, what are they claiming? Are they really claiming that all these airports have tanks?
Here's
and
the
what's
thing.
The purpose? Can I just say
that I think is the danger, right? Is that sometimes you can go way too far, right? People can go way too far, and that's why I like to be as moderate as possible. And that is, I am not going to ignore the evidence of my eyes, Paul. Let me read you some of these comments and questions, Paul. They are coming in thick and fast, by the way. But I'm not going to ignore the evidence of my eyes. I dispute what you say about how one is sort of replacing another, and that's why a line or a trail will dissipate. Because believe me when I tell you this, over the last 15 years, I've sat outside and I've watched them for hours and hours and hours, and I've recorded them. And that is not necessarily the pattern that takes place. But having said that, I agree with you about this idea that it's happening on passenger planes. Sounds frankly ludicrous to me, absolutely ludicrous. And that's where I think there's a danger as people go too far. But let me read you some comments, Paul, because please also, everybody just acknowledge that Paul was at least prepared to come here live. You don't know what is going to be said to you. Sure. Or asked of you. And so, Paul, I want to thank you, first of all, for being prepared to do that. Whether we emerge from this agreeing or disagreeing is irrelevant. The fact is you've been prepared to do this, and that I honor straight away. So one of the questions I want to turn to immediately is, and I think this is an important one, is, let me see. Emma says, do we pretend the government haven't said they are spraying stuff up there to dim the sun? Well, that is exactly what they've said to us. They even went so far in recent times, Paul, to allow mainstream media to publish it. So how do you answer that? Because you say there is no sun dimming taking place, right?
No, what I said was the only evidence is that in California, there's been some illegals, non-approved stuff there, and that's it. But as regards our government, we've got Ed Miliband in charge who wants to do these silly things. We got people like Bill Gates who are dangerous people. Both of them are very dangerous people.
Extremists.
And so they've actually given £50 million recently, Ed Miliband, to do this, to actually experiment with this. But then this man's nuts. But we can't actually do it. Those trails you've just seen, by the way, when at the height these planes fly in the jet streams and things, the air's traveling 150, 200 miles an hour. So it travels 3,000 miles in a day. So any spraying we do that you see will probably end up in Western Russia, or in Sweden or somewhere. So you're not going to gather it here. And there's no, they'd have to have all these unofficial planes to have that density of what you just seen in the photograph, all these unofficial planes spraying to do what? And at any time of year as well. it doesn't add up. You see, no one on the opposite side to my argument is giving me, including yourself, is giving me any rational explanation. Now, you're agreeing with me of some gain here. If you agree that to have commercial flights all doing this is ridiculous, then that's a gain as far as I'm concerned.
I've never thought that anyway. I've never thought commercial flights are out there carrying passengers doing that. I've never thought that. And that's what I mean, how some people go too far. I think some people go way too far. And I have to wonder whether they themselves are plants, because I'm just going to refer to what Marco has to say here. And that is just look at the skies. The whole sky is full of a blanket of haze. It's completely changed. Paul,
correct.
Please. Yes, go on.
After 9/11, when all the aeroplanes in America were grounded, if you look at the aeroplane flights in America, it's just solid all over the place, really solid. And when they're all grounded, the day after that, the sky was so clear, it was unbelievably clear. Now, the fact is that all these flights around the world do actually spread a mist over the earth. They actually do, in effect, cause some change in the temperature, very, very, very slight, but they certainly do make it less clear. So the dissipation and all these contrails dissipate over a wide area eventually, and that does have an effect on the sky. So people observing that are quite right. And as we've had this huge increase in air traffic that's happened, that has happened, and it does happen, and the physics support that.
Next question from Alex in Edinburgh. Thank you, Alex, for sending in your question. Let me just remove this. Alex says, can you ask Paul what he thinks about researchers and studies that have found barium and strontium in puddles where neither are found in nature? What do you say about that, Paul?
Right. Well, if you've the onus, look out, let me tell you how science works. If you've done that, first of all, I'd like to see the evidence for that.
Not too patronizing there, Paul. Let me show you how science works, but go on.
That's fine. No, I'm sorry, but it works this way. It doesn't mean to say you've got no link for that coming from planes for a start. That can come from all sorts of sources. So there's no link straight away for planes. So I don't have to explain that. Someone has to give me a rational argument for that coming from planes. Now, as a person, I have gone on the record on my video and said the spraying of anything from the air is immoral in my view and should be banned. So I think even my opposite people, opposite argument would agree on that, because I'm after the banning of everything. I'm after the banning of £50 million being wasted on experiments done with a few kilograms. I mean, don't forget that volcano I mentioned, 60 million tons in one go. We're talking about a few kilograms, which has no effect at all, right? And there's no rationale whatsoever between these people. So if you exclude the commercial aircraft and you've got specialized aircraft, where are these taking off from? You couldn't keep this secret, but it wouldn't achieve anything. And it would not change the weather here anyway. It would change the weather thousands of miles away. If it did work, which it doesn't, but if it did work, it would change the weather thousands of miles away, because you're talking about 3,000 miles a day the air is traveling at that point, where they fly. 3,000 miles a day the air travels. That's at 150 miles an hour, right? So, and that's typical of the speeds. And that's why when you fly back from America, it's faster than when you go, because you've got the jet stream behind you. They pick up the tailwinds and so on. But, my video, all I ask is anyone watch my video. My video explains my position totally clearly. Yeah, absolutely clearly. And by the way, for those 3,381 jumbo flights every day with 50 tons each to get next to nothing in change in temperature, you'd actually produce 76 million tons of CO2 a day. Yeah. So the objective would you'd actually make it worse in their world.
I mean,
more CO2.
I get you, but it's impossible for me to actually fact check you while you're live on air. So, but the whole point is to also be able to give you a platform to be able to say your piece as well, because I've certainly given a platform to people in the other direction. So it is only fair that you get to have your say. But you wouldn't disagree with me about certain events that have happened around the year, and one example around the world rather, and one example was in Spain when you had actual whistleblowers, right? You're familiar with that? So
I am.
employees of Spain's meteorological agency, they said that Spain was being sprayed nationwide by aircraft. They said it was lead dioxide. They said there was diatomite coming through the atmosphere, all various things. So they were whistleblowing. So that was happening in Spain. So
I agree, and it was in my video. I mentioned Spain in my video.
Right.
And I'm against that, but that was more to do with rainfall than getting. You've got to understand, we've been doing geoengineering for 100 years.
Right,
Those
cloud seeding. You acknowledge cloud seeding, don't you? That's the thing.
Cloud seeding, yes, and that's what the main thing was going on in Spain, as I understand it. But and just like Miliband wants to do a bit here, it's mad, right? It's totally bonkers. Physically, scientifically, it makes no sense at all. And what my video does is say, look, if you actually try to modify the climate with this, you can't do it. It makes no sense. You can't do that. So that's what it shows with figures and facts, right? And then states that it's immoral to do any of this. I don't even like cloud seeding, right? I don't accept it. And they do a lot in the Middle East today as well to try to do it. But you can only actually get out the moisture that's there. It only works when the moisture's there. It's a very hit and miss process. And I also have people say, oh, well, there's planes in the UK equipped with the tanks. There are. And they've got contracts with the Coast Guard ready. And they, I think, paid a retainer to be ready. There's about 4 planes, I think, with big 737s, quite big planes with the tanks in to spray. And they're there for doing things like when we have a big pollution incident and you have to go and spray the ocean, spray the seas around UK to get rid of the oil. That's what they're used for. So that itself doesn't prove anything. Now, don't forget that the other side has not come up with any rational thing. I mean, my biggest challenge is another friend of mine who is on the chemtrail side thinks, actually, no, Paul, they're just poisoning us. And those people have got tablets to stop them being hurt by it. And that's sort of nonsense. That's nonsense. And so is there are attempts to do geoengineering of the climate. Those attempts are wrong. They're being done by people like Bill Gates and people who are stupid.
For sure. And that we can definitely agree on. But that brings me to the next thing. Paul from Andover said, why did Robert F. Kennedy, who, of course, is now in charge of Make America Healthy again. So Paul from Andover said, why did Robert F. Kennedy say he would deal with them if they don't exist?
Because now he's got the power, there's nothing to deal with. Now he's got the power, and he's got the power to investigate with Robert, right? There is nothing to deal with. What he's found out, he hasn't come forward and said, here it is uncovered. He hasn't done that, right? Because it doesn't exist. Yes. So just because someone says, I'm going to do this. So if I say I'm going to do this, and as soon as I get into power, that's it. Well, he got into power and there's nothing there to do.
Interesting. Shirley from Belfast is very interested in all the patents that have been taken out regarding this. Said, can you explain the Hughes patent as one example?
Yes, I can. The ability to spray from an aeroplane, it's actually more complex than people think, the way it's done. And there are all sorts of different patents on that. And that's normal because spraying from aeroplanes, like I said, the pollution thing, you've got a company in the UK who's got a contract with the Coast Guard. Now they have to install all this equipment and they have to choose which one. And people vie with the best way to do it, the best way of doing that, right? So they'll be paid probably, I don't know the contract, but guess is they'll be paid a retainer to be ready to spray. Yeah, because they've got to keep the planes there a long time. Yeah, but they will also use those planes in other places around the world where it's asked for. So if there's a big pollution spill off Florida, let's say, or something like that, those may be called on then, and that's how they work. But they are paid retainers to do that. So having the patent to do something, which is perfectly legal and right in that sense, doesn't mean anything. There's no connection between that patent and geoengineering. Just the machine that can do it, which we know about. There's no secret.
Interesting. Right. And also, but you do accept, so when you say that the other side don't have an argument, obviously one of the arguments is that we are essentially humans being experimented on for all manner of nefarious reasons. And it could be depopulation, it could be spreading jabs, all different. There's lots of ideas that have been, given up for it.
But some of them are true.
Some of them are true. But
COVID.
What I wanted to exactly, but be careful on YouTube. Absolutely. And we all know the problems with C19. But you wouldn't deny, for example, that humans have been experimented on. For example, MK Ultra. We have been experimented on for nefarious reasons, haven't we? And this could be another one, couldn't it?
No. You see, just because it's got to be practical. You've got to show how. So I agree with you. Humans have been experimented on, and there have been, let's not use the words, but there's been certain areas where I totally agree with you on. And by the way, I was wrong about the initial one of those. And I very quickly realized I was wrong. And I told a friend, hey, you're right, and I'm wrong on this. I don't come on here to be right. I come on here because I only seek the truth. And if you're going to seek the truth, you've got to be prepared to be wrong. And that's how science works.
Absolutely. Science is not fixed. Science
Correct.
is always open to discussion.
And without free speech,
right.
Without free speech, you don't have science.
Absolutely.
Right. And therefore, I can't lose coming on because it doesn't. I think my grandson is 10 years old. And he went on about the Great Barrier Reef to me because my in-laws are very the opposite to me. All right. So my grandson's got two sets of grandparents, one of whom I believe belongs to Stop Oil. That's extreme. And so he came on about the Great Barrier Reef. So I made up a 90-second video just for him, sent it to him when it was Professor Peter Ridd, showing how healthy the Barrier Reef is. And then when he had a phone call afterwards, he said, but I don't like being wrong, Grandad. And I said, wow. I said, so you sort of carry on your whole life being wrong than be put right. And he thought about it. He said, no, I want to be right. So I said, so you've got to be prepared to be wrong. And that was the lesson. That was the lesson. And when I've been surrounded by Antifa, I've been into all sorts of issues. I've had people just peaceful on a train going to London, going to a TV studio, and I've had men two of them standing alongside me, shouting with the whole carriage at me. Yes. And so I've had the whole lot. But all I'm interested in is truth. And so it doesn't bother me. If some evidence could come up, fine. But you're just observing the sky, which is completely rational explanations I can give, is not the answer. And you'd have to have all these planes, let's take out commercial, that's not viable. You'd have to have planes doing it for what? So we change the weather in Russia or somewhere. That doesn't make sense.
Let me ask you this. Cornish Nasty said, why does rain smell of sulphur, Paul?
Well, okay. If you've got the sulphur, it's the SO2, and you say, why does rain? I haven't noticed that. I don't know that. But if someone says rain, I would say that's some pollutant, some local pollutant, because if you've got pollution like the old unclean coal power stations, because today you can have them so clean, but the old unclean, then you get that. You get that coming out in the rainfall because the sulfur, the SO2, would come out in the rainfall. But that's pollution. And by the way, I'm hugely advocate of anti-pollution. I've been an environmentalist since I was the age of 11 when I gave some of my limited pocket money to stop pollution in rivers.
And you've travelled extensively. You've observed different conditions. I know this about you. The same person has also asked another great question, and that is, can you explain the lack of insects? Because there is a definite difference in the sheer volume of insects that we've experienced. And
I think there is. I actually, today we have more species than ever in the history of on Earth, by the way, if you count the number of species and so on. But I think there is. I think if you look at butterflies and you look at, we have a wildflower garden. I have acres devoted to nature, many acres. Yeah, I have a wild animal area in effect with black badgers and all sorts of things. I have a whole meadow, a wild meadow and things. So I have lots of things. I'm totally in support of this. And now my wild meadow is really interesting because a friend camped in it. And he said, for every square meter there, Paul, there must be 1,000 grasshoppers and spiders and things. But you don't get that elsewhere. Now, as you manicure the landscape, you're going to get less insects, to put it bluntly. So I think there are less insects, yes. But that's not to do, again, with the spraying. It's to do with other issues.
You have another.
So if you're growing rapeseed oil, for example, any crop, you're going to go monocrop. You're going to have a single crop. You're not going to have the wilderness that was there before.
M says, why do I have magnetic metal particulates on my garden table each time it rains?
Well, I don't know why, because I'd have to look at his particular table. What he's saying is then each time, just examine that statement. Each time, so every time it rains, this metal arrives. So now, how does that happen? How can that happen logically? Oh, there's a plane always flying over his house each time, low enough to deposit the minerals on his table. which is not possible because that plane would have to fly some distance away to even do that, right? Even if it was low, and you don't do any of the geoengineering except possibly cloud seeding low. You do it so. That's meaningless. I mean, it could be a local factory doing that. I don't know. But that's not evidence. That is not evidence.
I take your point. For M, it would be because they're observing it. So I get that. I've actually managed to find a comment in your favor, Paul.
What?
Right. I believe him. Why would the evil powers that be spray pollution into the air? They would have to breathe the same air. It's not a direct form of targeting. So there you go. There's one definitely in your favor. Paul, you haven't convinced me. I still believe absolutely in the evidence of my eyes of just years of experience, but I do really respect and appreciate you being prepared to come on and face off like this. I absolutely do, and especially because nobody else was prepared to have that discussion with you. I didn't necessarily want to have that discussion with you because you are much more of a scientist in that respect than I am, and I just thought I'm not going to be armed or equipped with those facts, even though it is absolutely clear to me something has drastically changed. But I do. So we have reached some sort of consensus of understanding. We're both opposed to geoengineering. We both want it to stop. We think it's wrong. We think that the climate thing is a whole hoax and that needs to stop as well. And I'm going to do what I think is always a decent thing to do on these occasions, and that is you get the last word, Paul. What do you want to say?
Look, there's no point in me doing anything other than seek the truth. And that's all I do. And all you have to do to convince me I'm wrong on this, and by the way, what you just said is I'm not going to convince you. Well, there's an element of that's how religions start. You know, the best job in the world a couple of thousand years ago was predicting when the days were going to get longer. And if you'd figured that out, you could become a priest. And you could say, providing you do all this and you do all this and I have all this control, that round about the winter solstice, days will get longer because they'd figured that out. Yeah. And that belief comes from ignorance about how things work. Mankind is still ignorant. We don't even understand how the universe formed. We thought we did until 3 years ago with the James Webb. We thought we did. Science is not fixed. It's open to debate and free speech. We don't have science today as we used to. We don't have science. What we have today is a control from above trying to control that. And that does away with science. And all I ask is that I'm happy to be proven wrong. And I challenge anyone now to debate me on this or any other subjects I'm on about, because I've tried for years to get people to debate me and they won't. Right? And it's not because I'm particularly clever. It's because I think I've got hold of the truth. But there's nothing better for me than to be proven wrong, because I'd rather be put out of my ignorance.
Thank you. The only reason, thank you for that. I just want to briefly come back and just say I'm not a kind of like, a religious believer in any sense about any subject. But the only reason that I say you haven't convinced me is because I've not been able to fact check what you're saying. Obviously, you've thrown a lot of facts at me that I don't necessarily know. And in order for me, my process is not just to accept things at face value, is to go away, to listen back to what you've said. Does he make any sense here? Is that rational? Is that logical? Let me just check what he said. That's my process. And then, so sometimes I might have some delayed reaction. I may come back to you and say, Paul, I'm ready to have that debate with you again. Right? I may say that. You never know. But the point being, you came on, and I'm appreciative of that.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
Right. I've just recently done a video on the Ed Miliband's come up with 800 jobs in the northwestern Wales burying CO2. Yeah, 800 jobs. Yeah. So I wrote a paper on that. Do you know? And he said, look at these marvelous high-profile jobs, 800 jobs a year, burying 4.5 million tons of CO2. Right. So I did two videos. One works out in 2 minutes and does a paper. How long does that CO2 get to be taken up again by the rest of the world? The answer was 39.5 hours. So in 39.5 hours, the 800 jobs and all the year's work gone. But worse than that, the cost per job that we're paying to do it is over £1 million a job. So the £1 million a job it takes over 800 million a year to do this is actually destroying jobs elsewhere because it's sucking it in. That's how mad. So I can't defend mad people coming up with geoengineering ideas like that. And that's what Ed Miliband is. Thank you.
Thank you for being here with us today. Paul Burgess set the comments alight. Yes, indeed he has. Take good care of yourself, Paul. We don't have to agree for me to say thank you for being here today. Wonderful. Take good care of yourself. Thank you very much. Right. Okay, let's see. Oh my God. on. Trevor said, thanks, Paul, for coming on and making some points and stating your opinions and views respectfully. Right? Exactly. I mean, there's a squillion other things. Somebody said, please ask Matt Landman to debate him. Matt, turn me down. Matt, along with everybody else that I've ever discussed about chemtrails, which kind of was disappointing. Actually, I was disappointed with a lot of people because I thought that at least one person would say, I've been so forceful on your show about chemtrails, I can't wait for the opportunity to have a discussion with somebody who opposed that, but nobody did. And so it's just one of those things. So it was left to all of us. It was left to all of us to pick that up. And thank you very much. Lots of people say he was waffling. Right, bring it back again, Sonia. It's fun watching the chat cry, said Fred. Fred is a troublemaker after my own heart. Right, let's move on very swiftly. Mixed messages from the Lucy Letby quarters. I see. Oh, there's Paul. Paul, you're still there. What are you still doing there? There he is. There he goes. There he goes. The facts are, by the way, Sully Luan said the facts are they spray, it spreads, we see it, end of. And I am not going to reach a stage in my life where I'm going to just ignore the evidence of my eyes. As one example,
because it's going to get really hot.
This is a video that I did before. This was a day before we did the event, Hyde Park.
Look at this. Look at the sky this morning. They've been so busy. Look at that.
So I'm not going to stop banging on about this. Don't worry about that. Right. Lucy Letby, mixed messages from the Lucy Letby camp. Very interesting stuff, I see. Today's news tells us she is under supervision for fear of attack, but I'm not buying it. This is propaganda because she's actually getting some good press. And one of the good pieces of press that she's had was an interview with her new barrister, Mark MacDonald. He said she's feeling new hope. And it's interesting because Mark MacDonald gave an interview last week in which he talked about how he was approached by Lucy Letby's family. Lucy Letby, if you're not familiar, is the former neonatal nurse who has been ultimately convicted of murdering 7 babies and the attempted murder of a further 7. And many people have spoken out and said she's a scapegoat. None of this makes sense. It doesn't add up. And she was convicted of this at the Countess of Chester Hospital in Cheshire between 2015 and 2016. So actually a whole decade ago now. And but Mark MacDonald was speaking and he said that she's actually in really good form. And that she's in a very different place today than where she was 12 months ago. Well, indeed. And he said, remember 12 months ago, she'd lost every argument. She had been saying that she was not guilty right from the beginning. Nobody believed her. She went through a whole trial and she was convicted. She went to the Court of Appeal and she was convicted. She had a retrial. She was convicted. She went to the Court of Appeal again. She was convicted. And that was it. There, you have a broken person. But today, after everything that has happened in the last 12 months, she's got new hope. And he's, of course, referring to this new panel that he was able to assemble with national and international experts, including Dr. Shuley, whose own evidence was actually used to convict her. And so what Mark MacDonald has done is, as I say, he's assembled this incredible panel of international neonatal and pediatric experts. And they held a press conference in February where they talked about refuting the evidence presented at trial. They called out inconsistent testimonies from the likes of, for example, TV doctor, Dr. Ravi Jairam, who had claimed during the trial that he had actually seen Lucy Letby standing over a baby with a dislodged breathing tube. Turned out not to be exactly right. Parents, some of the victims are deeply distressed with Mark MacDonald's intervention, but Mark MacDonald's job is as a criminal barrister. He should absolutely be defending somebody, and certainly in a situation like this. Very interesting stuff coming up. Also, Panorama have had to apologize. They made quite a significant error. So they had their big panorama where they're looking into this new evidence, and they started to sort of demonize the people who are involved in the new evidence. And the BBC has now had to admit that it broadcast inaccurate figures about Lucy in the Panorama film. Now, that is unconscionably bad because millions of people will see that because it's on the BBC platform. And but Mark MacDonald has now vowed to complain to Ofcom over the misleading statistics, which claim that breathing tubes were dislodged 40 times more than normal when Letby worked as a trainee on the neonatal unit at Liverpool Women's Hospital. And the panorama, Lucy Letby, who to believe? Well, let's start with not the BBC, yeah? So next week, I'm going to be joined by somebody very, very interesting. She's actually a whistleblower, and her name is Stephanie Davis. And she was involved. She was from the senior coroner's office, and she was involved in first reviewing the deaths of the babies at the Countess of Chester Hospital for Cheshire Police back in 2017. She now believes that Lucy Letby has suffered a miscarriage of justice. Stephanie's going to be joining us. She's talked to The Guardian, she's talked to Channel 4, but what she's actually saying is that she was given only 3 hours to carry out her review, was told it was key to detectives deciding to commence an investigation into Lucy Letby. And Stephanie says crucial details about one of the babies at least could have made all the difference to the police investigation. But I think anybody who's observed the police force around this would say that they are zealous at best. They couldn't wait to announce the convictions. They put out really sort of jovial videos. It was really inappropriate for police to behave in that way. So I'm very much looking forward to Stephanie joining us and telling us what is actually going on. And one of the things that's interesting, of course, we saw in the Sunday papers yesterday, is they are talking about, like, on the last shift that Lucy did, she was there late, she was filling out paperwork and everything. And she didn't know until her final day, June the 30th, 2016, that it was going to be her last day. And Stephanie had tweeted she was a whistleblower, but instead of listening to her, they went for her instead. And I'm very much looking forward to talking to a whistleblower with that level of knowledge. So that, I think, is going to be interesting. Briefly, we need to talk about this individual. We need to talk about Caitlyn Jenner. Caitlyn Marie Jenner, formerly known as Bruce Jenner. American media personality, retired Olympic gold medal winning decathlete. Jenner has 6 children with 3 successive wives, and outside of being an Olympic athlete, was most famous, of course, for being the father and stepfather on the reality show Keeping Up with the Kardashians. He was married at the time to Kris Jenner. They had 2 daughters, Kendall and Kylie Jenner, as well as Kris's other children from her previous marriage, Kourtney Kim, Khloe and Rob Kardashian. Kris Jenner and Bruce Jenner, as was separated in June 2013. Their divorce terms were finalized in December 2014. Now, I don't need to labor how awful the Kardashians and Jenners are for society, except for the brother. I've got really nothing to say about Rob. He's kept himself out of the limelight. But all the women are absolutely atrocious role models. None of them have the faces they were born with, and their fame is a combination of their big sister Kim flogging a sex tape with the aid of the mother, who is like a pimp to all of them, and their father, lawyer Robert Kardashian, covering for O.J. Simpson, who murdered his wife Nicole and her friend Ron. So that's really what the Kardashians became famous for. They're very grubby people indeed. They flaunt porn and wealth in equal measure. And I suspect that part of this was that Bruce/Caitlyn's need for attention was because he was completely overlooked by the Kardashian and Jenner women. He came out as trans in 2015. Announced the new name in July of that year, launched a reality show. This was one of probably the first images that people saw. There'd been some kind of like paparazzi shots where Jenner had been caught around Malibu home, like in a dress and everything. But this was launched onto the world, and I still find this fairly atrocious, actually. Let me just bring it to you. This was on the front cover of Vanity Fair. Call Me Caitlyn, a huge shot by Annie Leibovitz, very, very famous photographer. And at the time, Caitlyn Jenner was suddenly given lots of awards that were really for women. And one of the most egregious ones, I think, was the Glamour Magazine Award, which named Jenner as one of its 25 Glamour Women of the Year. And Germaine Greer, feminist icon, said that the decision to award Jenner with a Woman of the Year award was misogynistic, and Jermaine Greer questioned whether a trans-identified male could be better than someone who is actually just born a woman. And of course, it's horribly misogynistic and horribly virtue signaling and all of those things. Nobody who claims to have transitioned to the opposite gender should be awarded any kind of award or any kind of a place that actually replaces the sexed person. I'm completely opposed to that. But there's a series of things that happened with this individual that I became deeply uncomfortable about. And one of them was the fact that Caitlyn Jenner, and the only reason that I'm going to call Bruce Caitlyn now is in the same way as anybody who chooses to change their name, I will honour that. So, for example, even though national media will refer to Tommy Robinson as Stephen Yaxley Lennon, I call him Tommy Robinson because that is the name that he chooses to use. So it's not me just kind of adhering to the trans orthodoxy, not at all. It's somebody who's chosen to change their name. And so, okay, right, I go along with that. Because if I chose to change my name from Sonia to, I don't know, whatever, Sarah, I would like people to acknowledge that, but you shouldn't have to either, and it shouldn't be a legal issue, but I'm just going to acknowledge it because most people will understand who I'm talking about. So my issues with Jenner are multiple, and one of them is the fact that Jenner is a genocidal supporter. And for one example, Jenner went to Tel Aviv on June the 13th. The idea was to go for the first Pride since what had happened on October the 7th, 2023. In the event, it was actually cancelled. But Jenner went there and was with a number of people, including various Israeli influencers. And Jenner posted photos. There was the issue going on with Iran at that moment in time. There were strikes taking place between Israel and Iran, and Jenner, along with other very, very privileged individuals, were down in bunkers drinking wine and playing the victim, as per. And Jenner was very much about, this is who I'm standing with. These people want peace, not acknowledging for a second, and doesn't acknowledge what the Israeli government have done to people, not least poor people in Palestine, which is fairly atrocious. And Jenner was actually asked why had originally tried to keep the trip quiet. Well, I know why one would originally try to keep a trip to Israel quiet, right? But actually told a TV station that didn't tell any of the kids that was going to Israel, and said wanted to keep it all quiet, and didn't want to hear any criticism. Said, I really don't care. Let them say what they want. Every time I've come here, I've had a great experience. When I was invited, I knew I'd hear some criticism, but I also knew they take good care of me. That tells you what an essentially selfish individual we are dealing with. So as long as you get free wine and are treated lovely jubbly, then everything is hunky-dory, right? That already tells you a great deal about an individual. Many people know I have a lot of problems with people who claim to be, of the opposite sex or of the opposite gender. And I think that this already gives you an insight into who this individual is. And this individual has done some really stunningly inappropriate things. As one example, once gave daughter Kylie knickers with his face on it from when he was an Olympic athlete. That's some weird stuff. I'm sorry. That is really weird stuff. And even she said, I couldn't get my head around it, really. It was really inappropriate. You think your father giving you knickers with his face on it? Yeah, that's definitely inappropriate. Weird. And that was before Jenner had come out as trans. And then, of course, there's the issue of this very mysterious car accident that took place. Okay, a fatal car accident, February 2015, when Jenner was involved in a multiple vehicle collision on the Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, California, near Jenner's home. Kim Howe, an animal rights activist and actress, was killed when Jenner's SUV ran into the car. And trying to get to the bottom of what actually happened there is extraordinary. The amount of secrecy around that event is alarming, including settlements. What was interesting was, even though there was a woman dead, it appeared to be absolutely Jenner's fault. There were no charges ever brought. Prosecutors declined to file any criminal charges, but 3 civil lawsuits were filed against Jenner by Howe's stepchildren and drivers of other cars involved in the collision. But you know what is, and one of them was a Hollywood agent who settled her case in December 2015 with Jenner. Can't find details of that. And Howe's stepchildren also settled their case in January 2016. Again, financial details not disclosed. So it would appear that you can kill somebody, and there was not even a thorough criminal investigation from what I can discover. It was just the authorities declining to prosecute, which I find extraordinary. And then it went immediately over to civil. So that I thought was quite alarming. And the fact that it's all kind of sealed and undisclosed is also alarming. That alarms me. And then there was the very, I think, peculiar relationship with another trans-identified male, significantly younger than Caitlyn Jenner, who has also just died in a car accident. And this is Sophia Hutchins, and Sophia was formerly Scott. Hutchins died in an ATV accident near Jenner's home, again in Malibu, California, in July of this year. Just 29, very, very young indeed. They'd come together. And actually, Scott had said that it was Caitlyn Jenner's transition that finally kind of took him over the edge and decided that he wanted to be Sophia. And by all accounts, went the whole way, because I've seen images of when Scott, who became Sophia, was modeling for Kim Kardashian's shapewear range, which is very revealing. And that looked like a woman's body to me. That looked like all things had been removed, which is so extreme and so heartbreaking in so many respects. But that whole situation was absolutely weird. There was the whole thing of when they came together, they'd been introduced by their makeup artist, and Scott / Sophia was extremely young at the time, early 20s. And it was said that they were romantically involved, and they allowed that to be said in newspapers. They even allowed it to be said that they were going to be getting married. And bear in mind that Jenner is like 40 years older, if not more, actually, than this young person. And so it was all very weird. They lived together, very strange indeed. And but then Scott / Sophia eventually came out and said, actually, we weren't romantically involved, but they allowed people to believe it. And certainly Caitlyn Jenner influenced Scott into to becoming a trans-identified male. And I just, one of the reasons I wanted to mention Caitlyn Jenner today is I'm so sick and tired of people just kind of whitewashing everything. It's like, so there's a woman dead after a car accident, and car accidents can happen. Believe me, I've been involved in them. They're horrible. They're not called accidents for no good reason, right? But a woman is dead under quite mysterious circumstances that is then covered up. Then the person who was living with Caitlyn Jenner is also now dead, even though there was a lot of question marks over that relationship. And I'm not accusing Caitlyn Jenner of anything. I'm saying that there are these weird events that happen around Caitlyn Jenner that are problematic because we are dealing with a problematic person. That's kind of my bottom line. I'm not about sanitizing anything, and I'm not going to sanitize this situation here. I have a great deal of problems with somebody claiming to be a woman and then stepping into women's spaces, a great deal. I have a great deal of problems with a father giving their child knickers with his face on it. That's problematic to me. It was also, although it's now been scrubbed from the internet, there was also a quote from Kylie a long time ago, and which was that when Caitlyn was bruised, he'd been caught actually trying on their underwear, but that's been scrubbed from the internet. And so that can only now be placed in the realm of a rumor. But I just wanted to mention Caitlyn Jenner, because I'm so sick and tired of being sick and tired of people pushed at us in this kind of very virtue signaling way, as if this is a great role model. Caitlyn Jenner is not a great role model, not at all. No way, no how. And I just wanted to say that. Simple stuff. And thank you so much. Your shout. Thank you so much. Great response to some of my videos. Wonderful stuff. Really appreciate it. Great response to King Charles video, including, according to Shin, although I did hear it a mention on the Candace Owens show, which made me feel a little bit shite, frankly, because I'd only said the other week how I don't really trust her. And then she gives me a mention on her show. Made me feel bad. It really did. But the reason that I say I don't trust her is because of that awful social autopsy thing that she used to run where she was doxing people. And that's just horrible stuff. But I would welcome an opportunity to talk with Candace and actually discuss that with her as one example. But thank you very much. I'm just going to read some comments. As one example, MT Knitter said, Charles's parents, awful, horrible job raising him. Indeed, in that deep dive that I did, I looked at how very cold and unemotional his upbringing was. And Jackie and Brendan said, never my king. Sick and twisted. And I want to read this comment, which is pertaining to the video that I did last year about Jordan Peterson, about being a wolf in sheep's clothing. And it's from Twillatharp. Have I said that right? Saying, hi, Sonia, and thank you for your journalism. I've just discovered your website, and this one about Jordan Peterson is like a breath of fresh air. He'd become almost like a god in Canada. Now he's left Canada and lives in the States. I support your critique here, and thank you for your objective attitude. He's a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. So presumably I'd said he's a psychiatrist. Apologies for that. So not as educated as he might be when it comes down to it. The governing body of psychologists challenged Jordan Peterson when he was still living in Ontario and requested that he take a refresher course. Indeed. But thank you so much. I very much appreciate your comments. And yeah, and also just to refer to this, because it's kind of funny, if I could show this video. Yeah. The last live show that I did, I think was August the 4th. And do you remember we had the outage, didn't we? At the end, when I was discussing free energy, I was discussing Maxwell Chikumbutso, African guy who has his car running on radio waves, according to him, and how he was being pursued, including death threats. And then the whole thing cut off, right? Weird stuff. And I couldn't get back on. And I eventually got back on my mobile and managed to log into StreamYard, but it was really difficult and it kept cutting me off. Eventually, we found a man, by the way, at the end of the road in a hole who claimed he was untangling wires. Excuse me, as you do. But Colin Guthrie, who is regularly in our chat, are you there today, Colin? Sent me this video and I thought it was interesting. Listen for the bang before it goes off. In the world, particularly globalists, do not want us to be aware of that. And of course, his life is in danger. His life is in danger. His life is in danger. Look at that. His life is in danger. And that was it. It was off. Now that's weird noise. That's a really weird noise because I'm not quite sure what it was. I'm not quite sure what it was. But anyway, Colin, thank you for spotting that. And hello to Gamer on X, who decided to ask Grok what was going on. And this is what Grok said. Grok, that we're saying we have to be incredibly careful in asking, but I thought it was interesting. This is what Grok said. Sonia Poulton's mention of her show crashing while discussing a free energy inventor aligns with historical skepticism around such claims, as seen in the 1974 Citroen water-powered car hoax, debunked by AFP Fact Check. So I think what's interesting there, Gamer, I'm not going to read it all, but thank you. And it goes on to say technical disruptions can occur due to network issues. Well, it appeared to be network issues, but I think we can all see that Grok is sending us absolutely in the direction of what the mainstream. I mean, the fact is, there was a man at the end of the road. He said he was untangling wires. He said, I didn't cut anything, honest Gov, right? But something cut. Anyway, I'm not going into the realm of conspiracy theory there. I'm going to say, all right, fine, that happens. Let's let it not happen again. So there you go. I just wanted to say that. I wanted to say that. Thank you, Cavan. Pink is definitely my color, apparently. Thank you to each and every patron at Patreon. I appreciate you greatly. I simply could not do this show without the support of all of our wonderful viewers. I'm making changes at the moment to my Patreon, so bear with me if you haven't been able to join for the last month because I paused it. But I want to thank everyone who donates to me, be that for Wake Up or my legal fund. It means the absolute world, be that a spherical or flat one, however you want it to be. And thank you over the kind of like last week. Thank you to David Cherra. Thank you so much. Very, very kind of you. Send me on my birthday. Very kind. And Lynette Thompson. Thank you again. And also to Peter Birch, Helen O'Carroll, Ian Jones, Margaret Ruffley, Alan Adams, F. Young, Dinesh Naru, Merv Whitney, John Goldsmith, and Susan No, who said, thanks, Sonia, for all your work over the years. Thank you so much. I truly, truly appreciate that. And I want to end. Grok is a load of old crock, said Fun Times. Absolutely. Thank you, Marco. I appreciate it. Guys, you can see this in the background, right? Look, that's our YouTube plaque for 100,000 subscribers. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Vanessa. I want to just reflect on my period away, lovely people. Thank you, Natasha. God bless you. And thank you all, everybody who's given me super chat today. You people are amazing. And I do truly appreciate you. I really, really do. I want to reflect on how social media was making me sick. It was making me sick. So I have, to all intents and purposes, quit my social media use. I have removed the apps from my phone, which was where it was so convenient for me to log on to X. I've removed my apps. And I did this about 3 weeks ago. And I now will only go on social media other than YouTube. I will now only go on X and Instagram and any of those other ones in preparation for Wake Up. So on possibly on a Sunday night when I might be talking to guests in the inbox, or Monday morning when I post about the show, and then I will not be on it again. Tuesday, Wednesday, and then maybe back again Thursday night just to check in with possible guests in the inbox, and Friday morning, and then I'm off. That's it. And I'm telling you people, it's changed my life. It has changed my life. I am in no doubt whatsoever that all that doom scrolling is a killer in so many respects. And so what I've done for the last month, I have limited my time on social media strictly to posting about the show and then getting the hell out of there. No doom scrolling or getting caught up in deliberate time wasting and distracting nonsense, such as some person or another said some nonsense or another about some nonsense thing or another. There's so much time wasted on social media. And you know what? I would say almost probably 95% of it does not matter, not a jot. And actually, I realized almost none of it matters. And staying away would just better aid me to do the things that I do here. And so I just wanted to talk about that really, and kind of like the clarity that it's given me, the productivity enhancing of my focus. I've done things like decluttering, right? Painted my bedroom. I painted my bedroom. I have been intending to do that for the last year. I painted my bedroom. We had our roof fixed, all this stuff that I realized just had to be done that I was kind of ignoring, even basic stuff like that. And obviously, social media is like any addiction. It is, you can become addicted to it. And some people cannot just go on there and leave. They become addicted to that scrolling, but they complain about being on there. And all I can say to you is heed that call. You are closer than you think to quitting. I'm not saying to necessarily end all your time on social media, but to use it sparingly. Social media was created by people who understood the psychology of things and how they could rope us in. But I want to talk just briefly about kind of like the benefits that have come from me, come as a consequence of this change. And it's a big change because I've been on social media for years. There has definitely been a reduction in anxiety and stress. Unquestionably, social media can be a source of great stress because what you have is not only conflicting information coming at you on a constant basis, but a lot of it is designed to scare the hell out of you. The fear factor on social media is turned up to 100 on an almost constant basis. And you just get kind of pulled in, don't you? And it's horrible. And even though you're an intelligent person watching this right now, you still can get pulled in. I also know that it has improved my mood and my happiness levels. Of that, I'm in no doubt whatsoever. Because the thing is, all that out there on social media, those are curated highlights of other people's lives. They're not necessarily true. And so they can take you into that whirl of kind of like of disbelieving or unreal worlds. But the moment you pull back, you start to focus more on yourself again, which is always a good thing, an important thing, and it will increase your self-esteem. My self-esteem's good anyway. It's decent. I have a decent ego and I have decent self-esteem. But even this, I think, will help it. And if you're suffering from any kind of depression or the blues, get the hell out of there now, right? There are enough studies already which will tell you about social media and the symptoms of depression, and you will benefit exponentially. Your sleep will improve. You will increase productivity. You will increase your relationships. I'm having in-person conversations with people again. Remember that? How wonderful. You will also have more free time. Your focus will absolutely, unquestionably improve. And I think this is one of the ones that I really like, is you get a greater sense of your own self, of your own presence, about being present in the moment, about what you bring to the table of life. And that's a wonderful feeling. So along with all of that, psychological improvements, and your physical health as well, because if you spend less time staring at a screen, you're going to be encouraged to take more physical activity and time outdoors. And if you are not able to take actual extended physical activity, do everything you can to get outside without your shoes on and just walk on whatever you can outside your door. Okay, whatever you can. And you will discover yourself in a way that you probably haven't for years, because we lose how much we get looped up in all this. The magic screen compels me, says Fallon Fox. Yes. Yes, having never owned a mobile phone sounds like I haven't missed out then. Absolutely. Social media is like MSM fearmongering. It is, Stephen. It's become terrible. But more time for self-discovery, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And the thing is, there's nothing like social media to surround you with energy vampires. And you've got to be careful, because you will be attacked by people, and you don't have to be a public figure to be attacked by people who want to take your energy on social media. And I know so many people have talked about feeling tired and fatigued. Energy is not limitless, people. It can be drained, and social media is a drainer, right? We have finite resources, and sometimes that requires boundaries. Social media does not give you those boundaries. Anybody can access you. And so all of that in the round tells me I've done absolutely the right thing to limit my digital time. I've disciplined myself. And also that comes to other areas of my digital time as well. I'm only checking my emails at a certain point. I'm getting help with those as well. And all of these things all have come as a consequence of me gaining greater clarity, which is great. And I'm really happy about that. So that makes me happy. So really, what I really want to say about this is that my week away and the week before that, a couple of weeks ago, has reminded me that every now and again, we need to do a call back to ourselves. That out there, the computers, the big tech bros, energy vampires, they are all stealing your energy. They're stealing your life force. Protect your energy. It is absolutely priceless. Most people, I heard this great quote, most people don't respect your time. Not really. They respect your availability, your access, and your usefulness. Remember that. Remember it. So just want to say no as much as possible to spending any extra time on social media. I promise you, you will benefit from it. You absolutely will. Once you create that distance. Now it's second nature to me. After a few weeks, what do they say? It takes 15 days to change a habit and replace it with a new one. Now I don't even think about hitting the first week that I'd removed the app. I kept looking for the app on my phone because I'm programmed, right? But now I'm like not even thinking about it. And I feel a sense of relief having created that distance. And also, you know what? It's also teaching me again, is reminding me what about compassion and empathy, because you can get drowned with the sheer volume of victimhood that you get hit with on social media. And some people are rotten to the core, and they use actual really awful, heinous situations to claim they are victims. There are awful people on social media, but you will protect yourself from all those people. So just identify the drainers and identify the things that boost you. Ground yourself, get those shoes off, put your feet on earth, all of those wonderful, wonderful things. And I promise you that if you start to implement any of these strategies, let alone all of them, you will cultivate for yourself a greater sense of well-being and resilience and all-round well-being. And I just wanted to share that with you. And of course, I'm going to end on a quote, because that's what I do around here, yo. And my quote is simple, and that is, you have healed too much not to raise the bar on who has access to you. Have a wonderful week, darling, darling people. Thank you to everybody who has made Wake Up possible this day and every day. It's lovely to be back with you. Thank you, of course, to all my wonderful guests. Thank you, as ever,
with Sonia Poulton.
to all the wonderful people in our credits. Love you lots and plenty, and I will see you on Friday. Have a terrific week. Take good care of yourself, peeps. Lots of love to you.